I've had such a busy June and I want to share a little bit of it. To start, I may have shared, I may not have shared, I decided to reread Moby Dick by Herman Melville. If you've been watching me for a long time, you know that I've been watching Emmy and Carolyn on BookTube forever, and I started participating in their Dickens versus Tolstoy book club, which is now the Game of Tomes book club. I haven't been as active in it the last couple of years just because I am in so many book clubs and like to do so many readathons and also want to read what I want to read. I was never expecting to reread this book. When I added it back on my Goodreads, I mostly use Storygraph now, but I've had Goodreads since 2011 and I can't let it go. When I added it on my Goodreads, which I have had since high school, I gave it 1 star. When I say I hated this book, I read it for myself in 10th grade, definitely because I felt like it was one of those books that you need to read and you should have read. And I just trudged and struggled through this. I mistakenly thought this book was about Moby Dick. I would say that it's not. If you know anything about Moby Dick, if you know nothing about Moby Dick, the whale does not appear on page until the final 3 chapters. So this book is much more an exploration of whaling and a background on whaling. There's so much interest in religion and empire and colonialism. There's a lot of interest in form. It's actually very Shakespearean, which I didn't realize on my first read either. And it is just so philosophical and very, very reverent. I don't want to make this entire video about Moby Dick. If you want to hear more on my thoughts, maybe let me know. But I did want to read a quote that I really got caught up on in the early half of the book, and I think that it really says a lot about the novel as a whole. So this is the end of chapter 7, so it is very early on in the novel. This is our narrator, Ishmael. Obviously, the book starts with the iconic first line, "Call me Ishmael." Yes, there is death in this business of whaling, a speechless, quick, chaotic bundling of a man into eternity. But what then? Methinks we have hugely mistaken this matter of life and death. Methinks that what they call my shadow here on earth is my true substance. Methinks that in looking at things spiritual, we are too much like oysters, observing the sun through the water and thinking that thick water the thinnest of air. Methinks my body is but the lees of my better being. In fact, take my body who will, take it, I say, it is not me. And I think that quote really encapsulates pretty much all of Moby Dick and what it's about and what Melville is exploring. It's very much about spirituality and having a reverence for the unknown and a reverence for the beauty of nature. There's reverence itself in the language. His language is beautiful and every word is very intentional, and it might come off as a little too flowery or too symbolic even, but it's just an appreciation for language, an appreciation for the ability to use it to describe the mystery of life. It's about mortality and living, what exactly that means. It is so much about identity and the self. It's about what makes up of ourself and what understanding is and how little of it that we actually have. But I had a busy June. My primary thing I wanted to share is my trip to Washington, D.C. My sister had an internship out there this summer, so my mom and I went to visit her. I took clips while I was there. I didn't vlog or film any talking, so I'll just talk a little bit about the trip right now, and I do have a little book haul. I flew without a carry-on. Even I only had a personal item, so my mom had to bring some back for me, so thank you, Mom. And I've just been reunited with all of those, so that's part of why I was waiting to sit down, and this is really the first that I've had time as well. So I flew out Thursday earlier in the day. I flew from a small airport, so I had a layover in Chicago and then flew all the way to DC. I got there pretty good time, and then we had to sit on the tarmac for 2 hours. There were no gates available, and finally it was long enough that they got the plane stairs. It ended up working out just fine because my mom got there the same time and we were able to Uber in together. But we got there the first day. We saw my sister where she's living, and we had dinner at Grazie Nonna. It was a little Italian place in the Circle Hill area. It's kind of near the White House. It was very, very good. I very much enjoyed that. And it was pretty stormy and pretty severe weather. So unfortunately, it was very, very hot the weekend that we went, and it has been very hot here in Illinois as well. But we were able to beat the rain, and pretty much all we did was get that dinner. The next day, we had a later start to the morning because our tours weren't till later. So we did a Capitol tour, which I've been on before, but this one was really cool because we went with an intern and a staffer for our Michigan representative. Obviously, I don't live in Michigan anymore, but I grew up there. If you reach out to your representatives in Congress, in the Senate, in DC, you can set up tours with their staffers. It's completely free, and you really get a one-on-one tour. It was my family and one other family, and it was really quite lovely. I very much enjoyed that. And then as well, you get a little bit more on the Michigan background too. For the first time, I was able to go up and see into the rooms, into the chambers, and that was really cool. It was a Friday, so they were not in session, but you can also do that while they're in session and see, which would be very neat to do. But just for our trip, it was a little bit more low stress, low maintenance to see that. After that, we went and sat in on a presentation at the Supreme Court. I keep saying Illinois Supreme Court because all that I look at and do day to day is mostly Illinois law, but it was the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court. This is the first time that I've been to the Supreme Court building, and that was really exciting. The man giving the presentation had little questions for us and a little quiz, and I failed some of them, so I need to get more up to date on current events. I do not really specialize in con law, but I very much enjoyed it when I was in law school. I would have loved to spend more time there and at the museum portion and learning more about the different justices and just kind of seeing them, because I have read a lot of their opinions, but what I did see and seeing the courtroom was so cool. And if you're a member of the bar in any state or territory, you can actually get sworn in to the Supreme Court bar. And I have a friend who has done that. You need to be licensed for 3 years, and there are some other requirements, but that's a really cool opportunity. And then if you are a member, you can actually go and watch the oral arguments, and you get to sit with the members of the bar, which is really cool. There is a dress code if you're an attorney. I don't know if there's a dress code if you're not. And if you're in DC, you can go and hear arguments in front of the Supreme Court. It's a lottery system online now. Next stop was not planned, so our Uber driver driving in, we drove past the African American History Museum, and he highly recommended it. Now, I've known about it since I've been going to DC. I've been 4 or 5 times maybe before this time. Every prior time that I'd went, it was still under construction. And the last time I was there, the building, the outside, it looked gorgeous and it was mostly done. But for some reason, I just had felt no time had passed and didn't realize it would be open. So thanks to his recommendation, we were able to go and see that. And I was very interested in seeing what they had on James Baldwin. I will be reading my last Baldwin novel this month and next month, just above my head. And I've now read almost everything he's written. We haven't done all of his essays or shorter works. I did miss Notes from a Native Son when we read that, so I need to go back and fill in and read that one. But we're on our last Baldwin, so I wanted to see what they had. Most of his stuff was on the third floor, if I remember correctly. It was in the social movement section. So on the top floor, they do have sections on art and culture, which was very cool as well. They had a poem by Langston Hughes. They had Lorraine Hansberry. They had some stuff on A Raisin in the Sun, which I love. It's a phenomenal, fabulous play. But Baldwin was mostly in the social political movement section because he was both, which is something that I didn't know about him going into this Baldwin journey. So they had one of his passports. His family had donated a postcard from him. They had a lot of his quotes scattered throughout. And then down, unfortunately, the time we got there, we didn't have time to do everything in that museum. All of it was very cool. We mostly focused on the arts and culture section and the sports section, and then the Baldwin area in the social movements sections, and we missed that whole underground lower level section where it goes through the history of slaves being brought into the United States for the first time and the slave trade all the way up through present day. And I wish we had had more time in that section, but they have a huge quote from James Baldwin on the wall, and it is so cool to see him honored in that way. If you're not tired yet, I was definitely tired. We went over to the Eastern Market area, and there are two bookstores that we visited that I had recommended, and we also ate dinner over that way. And I had a strawberry matcha ice cream, which was great. And I will wait and get into the bookstores when I do my book haul. I figure I'll do it all at once. Day 2, we got an earlier start. We went to the zoo, which I have been before. We love the DC Zoo. point of interest this time, as always, the pandas, but there is a baby elephant. The baby elephant was everything. They are so cute. They're so cute. And we got so much personal time with this elephant. They were with their mom, just so precious. And if anything will bring you national joy, it is our baby elephant for sure. So I have clips from the zoo. I have a lot of the elephants and the pandas. And then my sister kindly sent me a couple clips that she took as well that I'll put in there. After the zoo, we went to the Library of Congress. Also, so for Capitol Supreme Court, we had those planned in advance. Zoo, we also planned in advance and booked ahead. The African American History Museum, we did not, but they have same day ticket drops, and I woke up in the morning and was able to get those. And then same thing with the Library of Congress, they drop new tickets every morning, so I was able to get some of those. So I would highly recommend booking in advance to make sure that you can get into the places you want to see and the times that you want. Most everything is free. Some museums pay, but the ones I have mentioned are free with a donation. The Capitol tour might be money if you just go in and do a tour and not through your representative. I'm just not sure. So I got in there when the tickets dropped, and we got our Library of Congress cards. We got our library cards. That was very exciting. This is the first time that I've had one. We did one more museum. We went to the People's Museum, which is a museum on the history of the White House, which was also very cool. Had dinner near the hotel. I think it was called Stan's, and they're known for their chicken and waffles. I sadly did not get it. I just wasn't feeling super great. I would really like to go back and try their chicken and waffles. Then we decided we're still in DC. We're gonna go out. Let's do something. We went to the Lincoln Memorial. I've been there, but that's probably my favorite memorial. It was so cool to go back now that I'm living in Illinois and I live near all of these Lincoln attractions and monuments, and I've seen a lot of those and learned more about Lincoln in general. We watched the sunset off the back of the Lincoln Memorial, and there were some fireworks as well that we got to see over the mall and the Washington Monument, which was very cool. Like I said, I've been to DC several times. I did a class trip there, so on the class trip we did almost everything. I mean, you can't do everything in DC on a weekend trip, but we really hit all those monuments and some of the museums that we could and saw the Constitution. So this trip, we were not really concerned with doing every single thing. I've been twice on class trip sort of situations, and then I've been once or twice with my family. Now I would like to get into before we get started, I will say I fell victim to the Supreme Court gift shop. When I was in law school, they said that DC is like Disneyland for lawyers. What can I say? First one might be silly, maybe not, I don't know. I really like these little Oxford introduction editions. I haven't gotten one yet, but every time I'm in a bookstore I look at them. So I got the one on the US Supreme Court, thinking, or I'm hoping I know most of the stuff there. I'm excited to read through this one, and my main motivation in buying this is the appendices, and this appendice in particular, which is a chart of the justices, and it shows which president appointed them, when they were appointed, the end of their term, their years of service, and it's a nice little reference all in one spot. I'm curious on that. I don't know if I talked about, I read Confronting the Presidents recently. I really read that one. It was a lot of stuff and American history that I already knew, but I really struggle with dates. I am basically number illiterate. In buying these short introductions and these short history type situations, it's usually that I know a lot of the history behind it, but I don't have a really good concept of chronology and especially contextually what all was happening at the same time other places. I'm quite bad at that. So trying to get a better understanding of timing of everything, because I think context is really important. I will talk about the next two that I got together. Many of the justices currently serving, and I'm sure past justices as well, have written memoirs and shared them with us. So I ended up buying two. I got the ones by Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson. So I wanted to get Jackson's memoir. This is actually one that I got wrong when they asked who was the most recently nominated justice to the Supreme Court. Not know anything about her. I haven't read any of her opinion. And while I was there, I learned there have actually only been 6 female Supreme Court justices. I would love to learn more about all of them and their lives. As you know, I've been really getting into memoir lately. Obviously, attorneys, especially if you're a Supreme Court justice, have to be very strong writers and be very good at writing. So I'm sure that these are just very well written, and I'm excited to hear her story. There's just some lovely pictures in there as well. This is a signed edition. I am a sucker for a signed edition, but I just think it's so special and nice. And then Sonia Sotomayor was the first Latina individual appointed to the Supreme Court. Definitely the first female, but maybe the first ever. Learned a little bit more about her in law school, but honestly don't know a whole lot, and it is signed as well. Okay, we will move away from the Supreme Court gift shop. The next one is also from a gift shop, though this is from the African American History Museum gift shop. They had so much Baldwin. Unfortunately, I already own it all because I have the American Library set, which they also had there. I'm really glad that I got that edition. It's everything all in one, and there's actually more in there that we haven't read with my book club, so there's more Baldwin to still get to. There is a new memoir that just came out. It is written by the professor of one of the ladies in my book club. I really want to read that one. My favorite local indie bookstore does stock it and carry it. I have a $5 off coupon there, so the next time that I'm in town, I'm planning on picking it up there. I also, as I said, I only had a personal item, and that biography is 600 to 800 pages. There is no way that I could have bought that there and brought that back. So that was not the place to buy it. They had a great selection. I actually have already read a lot of what they carried and or owned it, which is awesome. I did pick something up. This is the Everyman's Classic Library edition of Langston Hughes. It doesn't have everything, but it has his first poetry collection, The Weary Blues, another poetry collection, Not Without Laughter, and a novel that he wrote, The Ways of White Folks. Really, the only poem I've read by him is A Dream Deferred, which I love, and I'm excited to get to more of him. I really love the Everyman editions. The final book that I got was at the East City Bookshop in Eastern Market area. This was a staff recommendation. It's Audition for the Fox by Martin Cahill. It is a sci-fi type story. I was drawn in by the fox, of course. This follows a protagonist. There are many gods in this sci-fi slash mythological world, and you need to apply to a god as a patron. She's sort of out of chances, and she applies to the god of tricks, the fox, and it's about what ensues there. It was a really cute shop. They had a really great selection. Went to one more bookstore. I did not get anything there. That had a really good used book selection, especially for American history and politics. I wish that Ryan had been there. He would have loved that. They also carried really cool old editions. So they had a copy of We Have Always Lived in the Castle, a first edition by Shirley Jackson. That was very, very cool. And they also had it wasn't a first edition of Moby Dick, one of a first like copies printing. It was so cool. I think they had another cool copy of Ulysses. So they had a really good rare books selection there. There was one last bookstore that I really wanted to go to that unfortunately is further out and we just didn't get time. That's called Politics and Prose. That one sounded very interesting to me and I just didn't make it out there.